Hey YouTube, it's me again. How's everyone doing today? Hope everybody's having a great day. As usual, we're just gonna start up with some more of the Encyclopedia Eorzea. So, if you enjoy my content, definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button below and ring the little bell so you know whenever a new video comes up. And for those interested in having these on demand, my Patreon does have the recordings of these streams up earlier than normal. So make sure you take a look at that link as well if you're interested in that. For now, we're just going to start with the Battle of Cartano. We're about, I want to say, maybe a tenth through the book, so we've got a long way to go. So let's see here. Here we go. The Battle of Cartano. The city-states of the Eorzean alliance steeled themselves for their final engagement. The defense of Ul'dah was left in the hands of the brass blades in the Sultan's Horn, as the immortal flames departed for Cartano from the Gate of Thal, east of the city. Passing through this gate was a time-honored tradition for Ul'dah's armies, for it was said that the Keeper of the Dead would grant death once to those who departed from his egress, thus allowing them to avoid a second death on the battlefield. Meanwhile, in Limsa the ink was barely dry on the Galadian Accord when the Maelstrom enlisted the help of powerful pirate factions in securing the plains under the Scarlet Standard. Notorious pirate bands such as the Bloody Executioners, the Kraken's Arms, and the Sanguine Sirens became free companies invested with full martial authority. The twin adders of Gridania departed the Black Shroud with the elder Seedseer Kani Senna, flanked by the Wood Whalers and marksmen of the God's Quiver, with a nominal contingent remaining behind to guard the city. Marching with the Grand Company's ranks were scores of adventurers, wielding mighty weapons they had won in their journeys. The armies of the Eorzean Alliance assembled in northern Thenland, proceeding as one north to Mordona, before pushing into the plains from the west. The remnants of the 7th Legion placed themselves in formations on the eastern edge of the plains, while a detachment from Castrum Sentry would assault the Grand Companies from the rear. The commanders of the Eorzean Alliance countered the offensive by dispatching adventurers to keep the Castrum Sentry cohorts at bay, while the front lines advanced toward the Imperial host. Both sides had made their first move, and the Battle of Cartano had begun. As the main infantry of the Eorzean Alliance spread out to meet the Imperial forces head-on, Archon Louisoix soon arrived and commenced his summoning of the 12 from a promontory overlooking the battlefield. Here, he would endeavor to focus their divine powers on Dalamud. The vanguards of both armies clashed as the tide of battle ebbed and flowed in favor of the Alliance, then the Imperials, then back again. The Garleans, however, would soon completely overturn the odds when they deployed the next phase of their strategy. 10 score Magitech Knights, each aboard their own Reaper-class Magitech battle armor. The offensive prowess of these newly developed war machines was overwhelming, and the Alliance's tentative hold on the front line began to falter. For the Eorzean Alliance, this was the first large-scale operation to combine the efforts of so many different forces. Commanders struggled to properly coordinate the movements of each unit. Ad hoc members of the Grand Companies, such as the pirate factions of Limsa and the Alamegans serving among the Immortal Flames, employed tactics that differed from and often conflicted with one another. In that sense, it could be said that the vast army which faced off against the 7th Legion in Cartano was little more than a haphazard assemblage of units charging aimlessly forward with but a common purpose to bind them. The confusion increased tenfold when the Magitech Knights and their Reapers descended upon the Eorzean factions. Whatever orders had been handed down meaningless now, as every man fought for himself. The Alliance's numbers far exceeded that of the dwindled Imperial Legion, yet the lack of cohesive strategy meant the full power of their forces was never brought to bear. The Garleans, while fewer in number, had at their disposal an array of advanced technology and years of conditioning under a strict military regimen. Once the Reapers had been deployed, the 7th swiftly gained the upper hand. At this chaotic juncture, the adventurers proved the Alliance's salvation. Those who were sent to dispatch the Legion's diversionary force at Castrum Sentry made their belated debut and quickly joined the fray. They were no strangers to the maneuverings of Magitech weaponry, and reinvigorated the Eorzean side by forcefully advancing upon the Legion's Reapers. Through the adventurers' efforts, the Imperials were pushed back, allowing the Eorzean alliance to claw its way forward once more. A group of adventurers assembles in Mordona as pictured below after answering a call to arms from the Eorzean alliance. They would engage the Imperial Legion marching from Castum Sentry in the vicinity of Silver Tear Falls. The Elder Primal Bahamut. None on the battlefield were prepared for that which brought the hostilities to an end. Upon quitting the firmament and entering the skies above Cartanu, the red moon cracked, and from within the iron sphere emerged an ancient primal the likes of which Eorzea had never seen. According to post-calamity research by the Archons of the Circle of Knowing, the primal that the Alligans enslaved within Dalamud was none other than the dreadworm Bahamut, last summoned some 5 millennia prior by a horde of dragons on the southern continent of Mericidia when their motherland was invaded by the Allagan Empire. The vessel broken and Bahamut released from his shackles, the colossal worm took to wing to inflict his millennia of rage upon the realm. The Elder Primal tore away from Cartanu and rained a fiery hell upon the land. In the end, there was truth in Nael Van Darnus' incoherent ramblings addressed to the moon. The Legatus was aware of the monstrosity housed within Dalamud and was heeding Bahamut's plea to be freed from his prison. Both the molten shards that rained down from Dalamud and the searing flames which spewed forth from the dreadworm's maw were indiscriminate in their paths, and war became an afterthought as friend and foe alike fled the battlefield in terror. As the men of both armies ran for their lives, Louis-Soix Leveilleur kept silent vigil over Cartanu, unwavering in his effort to summon forth the power of the 12. Though Louis-Soix may have failed in his attempt to repel Dalamud back into the heavens, he would not allow Eorzea to bear the brunt of Bahamut's rampage, toiling on borrowed time to seal the Elder Primal away where he could raise the realm no more. Wielding the legendary staff Tupsimati, he drew from the great reserves of Aether flowing forth from the land, channeling its strength together with the overwhelming prayers of the people. The power of the 12 manifested itself in complex runes in the sky, in the most powerful sealing enchantment attempted in Eorzean history. The stone marks of the deities that were being nourished by the prayers of the Circle of Knowing were engulfed in pillars of light, becoming glowing spears that pierced the dreadworm, binding him in place as the runes confined him in a new prison. The plains of Cartanu were bathed in the light of the 12, and it appeared that the ritual was complete. Despite the fact that all eyes were fixated upon the summoning of the 12, there appear to be no witnesses who can recall with certainty what happened after the Elder Primal was enveloped in the god's light. It is said that Archon Louis-Soix's powerful spell, combined with the vast emanations of Aether, had warped the memories of all who survived, an effect which lingered long after the calamity. What is known for certain is that by the time the light of the 12 had dissipated, Bahamut was no more. At the same token, the faces of Eorzea's heroes, the adventurers by whose deeds Archon Louis-Soix's incantation came to pass, were lost to history. So it was that Eorzea plunged into the 7th Umbral Era. Dalamud looms in the sky above Cartanu, pictured here, bathing the plains in an eerie red glow. It is said that this ominous illumination, together with the chaos and confusion of war, led many to believe that the battle was being fought in the 7th Hell itself. Several golden shackling mechanisms known as neurolinks were bolted into the corporeal flesh of the Elder Primal Bahamut. Information gleaned from the research of historical artifacts suggests that they were but one of many devices fashioned by ancient Allag to subjugate and imprison beings of considerable Aftermath. After Bahamut broke free from his fetters, the fields of Cartanu descended into chaos. The commanders of the Eorzean alliance ordered a full withdrawal to save as many lives as they could from the indiscriminate fury of the Primal. Military records state that General Rauban of the Immortal Flames was hesitant to order a retreat after the adventurers had regained the line, but he yielded at the insistence of his compeer, Kani Senna of the Twin Adders. As their link pearls had fallen silent due to the massive ethereal disturbances attributed to Bahamut, the commanders were forced to deliver their orders by officers on foot. Maelstrom Command often claims that Admiral Merlwyb Bluffswin rode down to the battlefield herself on her beloved chocobo steed Victory to halt the pirate bands who bravely fought on even after the Primal emerged. Yet, there was no victory to be had at the Battle of Cartanu. The Eorzean Alliance formally withdrew their companies from the plains, and the remnants of the 7th Imperial Legion, warriors known for their brutal conquests the realm over, scattered and fled in all directions. After the retreat, the troops of the Eorzean Alliance scaled back to northern Thanalan. It was there that the Immortal Flames established a camp, swiftly tending to the wounded and tallying the survivors among the ranks. The Maelstrom suffered a blow during the withdrawal when Admiral Merlwyb sustained a grave wound that saw her removed from the battlefield. Serving in her stead, Grand Storm Marshal Einzar Slafsrin gave the order that the Maelstrom fall back to Limsa. The Twin Adders, however, would not return to the Shroud for some time, as Connie Senna volunteered her troops to form search parties and return to Cartanu, providing assistance to friend and foe alike who lay wounded but breathing on those hellish plains. The compassion of the Elder Seedseer, herself an accomplished healer, would save no small number of men from their fates. Pictured, countless splinterings of Dalamud rained down on the battlefield at Cartanu, composed of not only the moon's outer shell but fragments of the inner modules, which had confined the Elder Primal. Shards of Dalamud pierced the earth, producing a great fountain of aether that crystallized within moments the amber-colored, corrupted crystals now seen throughout the realm. These glowing talons remain a vivid reminder of the devastation wrought by the calamity. A most remarkable rebirth. It was not only on the battlefield of Cartanu that innumerable lives were lost to the calamity. Many casualties are ascribed to the shattered Dalamud's flaming fragments, which rained down upon the land from the peaks of Coerthas to the deserts of Thanalan. No small number of civilians in Limsa perished in a tidal wave that engulfed the coastline, caused when a giant fragment of the fallen moon's outer shell plummeted into the nearby sea. Still many more perished to the raging firestorms that burst forth from the flaring ball of etheric energy unleashed by Bahamut. Just when all hope seemed lost amidst the chaos and destruction, the land came alive and showed signs of an inexplicable rebirth. The survivors of the calamity believe that Archon Louisoix's invocation of the Twelve's power was the driving force which vanquished Bahamut, and could not be described as anything other than a miracle of the gods. Both speculation and rumor about the invocation would abound, with many speaking of a curious phenomenon in the sky above Cartanu, a brilliant light in the shape of a phoenix. Archon Louisoix's body was never recovered, though fragments of his legendary staff, Tupsimati, were discovered amongst the debris in Cartanu by a Twin Adder search party. The devastation at the center of Bahamut's rage was absolute, making the details of what truly occurred on that fateful night subject to vigorous debate among scholars for generations to come. And so begins a chronology of the 6th astral era. So this part will cover from year 1 to around 740. To forge a path to the future, one must first understand the past. What deeds and events of the 6th astral era set our realm on the path to destruction that would culminate in the 7th umbral calamity? This timeline enumerates the major happenings of Eorzea and its city-states, leading up to that fateful day when catastrophe struck. Year 1. The frigid climes brought forth by the great deluge subside, heralding the advent of the 6th astral era. Year 10. In Alamigo, survivors of the 6th umbral calamity form small communities in Giribania, descending into conflict over the area's limited resources. Many flee Abalathia entirely as the floodwaters recede. In Sharlayan, the Archon Nunkref leads a group of refugees away from the chaos of the mountains, sailing to an island in the northern Empty, where they found the village that will later blossom into the city of Sharlayan. In year 201, With a burgeoning populace, the Charlean system of direct democracy becomes unviable, and the Forum is instituted as a decision-making body where elected peers debate key issues of governance that had theretofore been at a standstill. In year 233, Charlean astrologian Lufon pens The Five Ages, an Eorzean chronology, an attempt to unify the independent calendars used by each of the city-states in the Fifth Astral Era. Circa 350, the Hur tribes emigrate en masse from the northern continent of Ilsabard in the first of three great migratory waves, and their numbers in Eorzea begin to swell. In Ishgard, a band of Elazin, displaced from their ancestral home in central Algenard, come to settle in Coerthus. Circa 360 in Ishgardian history, Elazin settlers come to the Sea of Clouds, where they commence construction of the mountainside sanctuary to Halone that will later become St. Thordan's Basilica. Small villages spring up in the vicinity, laying the foundation for the nation of Ishgard. Circa 370, the great worm Hreisvelgr consumes his Elazin lover Shiva, entwining their souls for eternity, and ushering in an era of peace between dragon and man. Thereabouts in Charlean history, at about 432, Charlean society names its first archons, individuals who have distinguished themselves in specialized fields of study. These archons gather and form an educational body, the studium, to serve as an institute of higher learning. In Ishgardian history, at about 545, sound like times, don't they? According to Ishgardian holy scripture, 545 marks the year when King Thordan is visited by the goddess Halone, who beseeches him to guide his people to the promised land of Coerthus. As the legend is told, the great worm Nidhogg attacks the caravans on their journey, and King Thordan and half of his men are slain before the dragon is valiantly driven away. The remaining knights, including the king's son Haldrath, guide the Elazin survivors to their destination. Eorzean, or rather Ishgardian history continues circa 550. In truth, King Thordan and his knights 12 ambush and slay Ratatosk of the First Brood, devouring the she-dragon's eyes to acquire prenaternal wisdom. Enraged by this betrayal, the great worm Nidhogg pursues and kills the king and half of his company, heralding the end of the era of peace and the beginning of the Dragon Song War. The Holy See employs the power of 20 and 4 dragon eyes to erect a great arcane ward, later to be known as Danafin's Collar, that envelops the entirety of Ishgard, as the city steels its defenses against the coming raids by Nidhogg's brood. The progenitors of the 4 high houses join together with the clergy of the Ishgardian Orthodox Church to pen a historic narrative that omits details of betrayal and slaying of Ratatosk. This new myth of the nation's founding is indoctrinated through the education of Ishgardian children. Circa 563. In Ishgardian history, the sanctuary to Halone undergoes extensive reconstruction and is renamed St. Thordan's Basilica. In Charlean history, at year 598, scholars of the studium successfully decipher ancient texts pertaining to aetheryte travel, a discovery which makes the construction of new aetherytes possible. In the year 600, in Charlean, a team of researchers from the studium commences a survey of the Northern Isles, and in year 605 in Charlean history, the studium concludes a full survey of the area within their territorial boundaries. They construct aetherytes on each of the 4 isles, Central Charlean, the Northern Isle of Ham, the Eastern Isle of Yorn, and the Southern Isle of Val, and perform a successful test of teleportation magics. Circa year 660, Hur emigrate to Eorzea en masse in the second of 3 great migratory waves. Meanwhile, in Gridanian history, driven from their home by the Huron settlers whose numbers continued to swell, the Elazin begin to colonize the Black Shroud. In year 666 in Charlean history, Charlean scholars glean a form of forcible teleportation magic from 5th Astral Era tomes. The first empirical test of the spell results in the disappearance of the researchers and a handful of observers. In the year 669, the council discontinues its search for the missing persons involved in the casting of the ancient teleportation spell, and designates the spell as forbidden magic, banning its further use. Circa around year 700 in Old Dawn history, the Lalafellan descendants of the Magi of Mach arrive in the remote frontier of Thanalan. Circa year 710 in Gridanian history, the Hir begin to colonize the Black Shroud, leading to territorial contentions with the Elezen. In the year 737 of Old Dawn history, Maquis settlers in Thanalan found the kingdom of Beladia. And circa 740 in Gridanian history, the Elezen and Huron settlers of the Black Shroud reconcile their differences